Nvidia started the rollout of its RTX 40 series refresh, and the 4070 Super launched. And we've got a few questions from supporters here following up on that. This one from Yonder Vittles. I'm sure this is one of those references that's going to be explained to me in the comments, but let's crack on. Hello, gents. With the release of the RTX 4070 Super and the impending release of the rest of the quote-unquote Super line, I've been mulling over moving on from my trusty 3080. However, I've never been more confused on the merits of an upgrade than I am now. I've long used an 80 card of some sort, but the price of the 4080 is a little hard to swallow. How do you recommend a person navigates the current GPU offerings? Would the DLSS 3 features of the 40 series make a change from a 3080 to a 4070 Super a quote-unquote upgrade, or is it better to just resign myself to the $300 price difference between what I paid for my wonderful 3080 and what they want for a 4080 Super? Man, Alex, this is a big one, isn't it?
That's a hard one.
It is, because I think fundamentally you need to ask the question of whether you feel the time is right for an upgrade. Do you feel that the 3080 is holding you back? I mean, possibly with the path generated stuff, path tracing stuff, frame gen would actually be a really interesting feature to have. We actually had a couple of supporters on our Discord side grade from the 3080 to the 4070 for the extra memory and the frame generation, right, which kind of makes sense if you really want to play Cyberpunk path traced.
You really want to play those games with path tracing, the 4000 series where you really want to be.
But ultimately, I don't think the 3080 is in any way obsolete at the moment, really. I mean, typically people hold on to their graphics cards for a few years. I suppose it has been a few years.
It's been a few, but I mean, there's some slight things here. Like, when did the 3080 launch actually? Was that 2020?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We're getting old. We look at this. I feel like this is hard. Like, really just look at the games you're playing. If those experiences that are noticeably different on the 40 series cards, specifically the side grade that Rich was talking about, like about the 4070 Super and maybe TI Super, maybe they'd be in your wheelhouse, what you'd want to do if those are the games you really are looking forward to. But they're already out right now, and we don't have any announcements of games in the mid to near term future where you say like, oh, you got to have RTX 4000 series to play this. It's a must play.
You need a TI Super.
You need a TI Super.
You need a 4090 egregious.
You need a 4090 egregious. For me, I would say Yonder Vittles. That I don't see the huge upgrade necessity for you at this very moment. I think I'm putting out a video soon enough about FSR2 modding on the RTX 3080 mainly, and it's not the same quality as DLSS 3 frame gen. I'm not going to lie about that. But, you're getting upped performance. I show in the video like Path Trace Cyberpunk running it at, I don't know what your output resolution is. I honestly don't know, Yonder Vittles. I showed it running at 1440p with...
That's fair.
That's fair. And, I could also pump up the internal res a bit if I really wanted to. I show it at a lower internal resolution in the video, just because I was trying to show like HFR footage. But there are ways around these things thanks to modders, and I think maybe give those a try out first. Think what see what you think about that. I don't see the huge necessity at the moment. And my gosh, what the next series of GPUs is, you'll be surprised. It's probably around the corner in some way that, like, in between now and then, what games are coming out that are going to spur you on, other than Alan Wake 2 and Cyberpunk? Like, what games are coming out between now and then that are really like, you need an RTX 4000 series for? I don't really know.
Yeah, typically upgrades aren't from one generation to the next. There's like, you go back to the one before that, I'd say. But ultimately, I think that the bottom line is that if you feel held back by your current card, I think you probably would need a 4080 to get both the
Right.
improvement to performance, because you're looking at like a 50% level improvement to performance, which you won't get with a 4070 Super. And you get the frame generation and stuff like that. It does feel like a palpably different product, whereas 4070 Super is like, a 3080 Ti really with frame gen. And the 3080 Ti famously wasn't really that much better than the 3080. Yeah, it's better, but not to the degree that would necessitated a $1,200 price point or whatever it was at the time. So, ultimately, I think that's the bottom line. Let's go to this question from F to the G. Hey there, lads. I really enjoyed the 4070 Super comparison to the PS5 in the latest GPU review, but why didn't you also include an older RT-capable model like 2080 Ti he's put here? It's the old Ti versus Ti conflict. Yeah. I think it would make a really interesting comparison as it is still going somewhat strong, but also missing some state-of-the-art features. The 2080 Ti could also serve as an interesting baseline for those who haven't upgraded since before the Bitcoin/COVID/Nvidia GPU craze. Thank you for this great and indeed weekly show. Yeah, I guess you could basically... Here's the thing, right? When you set up a new sort of test system, the amount of variables and comparison points that you can put into that test system is essentially infinite. So while you think a 2080 Ti is a really good comparison point, and it is, another equally good one could have been the RX 6700 non-XT, which is basically, a PS5 GPU, the closest you'll get in PC form. And then, you just go from there. There's so many different variables you'd have. It's like, well, okay, going back to like RTX 4060, how close is that? There's a lot of different stuff that you could factor in there. You've got to draw the line, particularly when you get like 1 week to review a GPU. And unlike Linus, and we don't have a massive team in a ginormous lab benchmarking everything. So we've got to kind of limit the data to some point. But, I guess the relatively small scope of those PS5 comparisons is such that if and when there is a bit of spare time, we can start to put in stuff like a 2080 Ti or a 6700 non-XT. I would love to see that Last of Us Part 1 benchmark, which is abysmal on PC. It would be fascinating to see the closest equivalent PC GPU actually running significantly slower than an actual PlayStation 5.
Like I said, Rich, that game, like they fixed it up a bunch, but like GPU wise, it's still not.
Was there any actual? I think you mentioned something about async compute.
Yeah, well, as it was launched, I was going through. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting their name all of a sudden. I was trading GPU captures, as in traces, with running on an RX 6800 XT at the time. With I forget their name. I'm sorry. Forgive me if you're watching this. And we were looking through it, and I was looking at it at my end. I'm like, I'm not seeing any asynchronous compute used here at all in The Last of Us on PC. And yeah, there were a lot of concurring there on their end as well too. So one of the interesting things about The Last of Us is they, especially with their presentations for the PlayStation 4 version of the game, is they used asynchronous compute so much on the Sony side of things, on the PlayStation console side of things, where they would purposefully slow down things on like the raster side, the non-compute side, to leverage that as more overlap window for asynchronous compute to run. It was like super async compute heavy game. And on the PC version of it, it's like minuscule. It's just kind of funny because obviously we come off like our interview with the team Ubisoft Massive behind Avatar, and they're saying like, oh, we use asynchronous compute on every platform, a whole bunch of it. And that's a game that scales actually pretty normalized in the PC scale. Like when you look at the GPUs that I was able to scrounge up there. So that's what I was a little bit worried about doing these PC to console comparisons, is that like not every port is as good as every other port. But it's still a good baseline. I like that you included that in the review because you saw just the huge differential between something like Plague Tale. You also did Cyberpunk and then that TLU, right? And
Yeah.
you could just see how different they were in terms of, to be honest with you, a little bit of that there is quality.
Yeah,
So,
basically the cromulent ports, you could actually draw conclusions as as just how much of a leap the 4070 Super is. But you look at The Last of Us Part 1 and it's kind of like, yeah, something's definitely wrong here.
something's wrong here.
Yeah, something's gone wrong. We've got also this question from some guy person. Rich, in your RTX 4070S review, you demonstrated how the 4070S is basically 2x the performance of a PS5, which is a great place to be. 4K 30 PS5 games turn into 4K 60 games on the 4070S. That's a great, easy story to sell. Do you think the 4070 Ti Supermax Plus Ultra egregious would have as good of a through line? I don't really think having 2.7x the performance of a PS5 really does you any good, and you only really see a big practical benefit if you are integer multipliers better than the PS5. 2x 60 FPS. Etc. etc. Do you see things that way, or is there something I'm missing? No, I don't think you're wrong there. I think you've basically got a class of hardware which was, I think we first kind of got there with the 3080, right, where we had the 2x scenario, and then you can factor in stuff like DLSS, which from an experiential side is kind of accelerating that still further. Obviously there is upscaling on the PS5, but DLSS is basically better, which again, boosts the experience there. When you're looking at the Supermax or whatever you want to call it, the difference between like 2.5x and 2.7x probably isn't going to be, tremendous. But I just wanted to make the point in that review that now the mid-range has reached the point where you get genuinely transformative experiences, not just from the 2X, by the way, but also from the fact that you've got stuff like frame generation, you've got endeavors like Path Trace Cyberpunk, that are viable on that are just completely unviable on a console.
Can I go in a different direction for a second?
Sure.
Me and the retro fanatic that I am, you're talking about The Last of Us Part 1 here. What if you decided, you know what, I want to enjoy this game as if I were playing on a PlayStation 3? Well, thankfully, I have a solution for you. I'm looking at someone that has benchmarked The Last of Us Part 1 running on a Radeon 7. They opted for 720p output with FSR2 performance mode, so 360p using very low graphics settings.
Oh my goodness.
The GPU is sitting at 99 or 98% the entire time, and the average frame rate is, well, it seems to vary, but I've seen dips as low as 7 FPS.
Jesus.
23 FPS,
What?
So maybe it's even worse than the PS Triple original. But
what? Are you serious? This is a Radeon 7?
It's a Radeon 7, yeah.
And it's running that
And they're running on a Ryzen 5 5500U.
Right. Okay. Well, that's gonna have
also,
still.
That's also going to be.
But the
be
CPU is mostly like under 8 or under 90% usage, and it's just the GPU is like maxed out.
Yeah, you're saying like the GPU is actually maxed, but
they put it at the lowest possible settings.
That's kind of embarrassing, honestly.
By the way, the channel is like Tanuj. I'm sorry, I can't say it's Gaminator or something. And I just searched for this. I was curious, and he's totally doing Radeon 7 benchmark. So here's the link for you. But I'm just completely amused by this because it looks absolutely terrible. But
it should be doing a lot better.
It should be doing a lot better. That's what like Rich said. Even with that Ryzen 5, even Ryzen 5 should still be doing better than that, though, Rich. Like way better.
Radeon 7 is kind of broad. It was comparable to like a 2080, so that should be sort of within touching distance of a PS5.
So the first part of the video,
scenario, right?
He's running it at very low preset, but native 720p. And as you can see, it averages about 19 frames per second.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it's because it's dropped driver support. I have no idea, but that's really bad.
You can see it's bad. It's real bad, but funny. I enjoy this. I guess that gives us an idea.
You've got a thing for these AMD flagships of yore, haven't you? The Fury X, you love it.
I love the Fury. No, it's just there's something about watching what was once considered like a flagship product, just kind of like the watching
Yeah.
how it drops off, right? And it
Yeah.
does seem to happen like really big with some of these old flagships like this.
2080 would do all right on that game. Not
Right,
great.
right.
Well, you know, obviously you'd be using DLSS, I guess, but even so, even at native resolution, it would do better than 720p.
Exactly.
So,
I'm just amused. I guess that's the question. Is I'm wondering why these graphics cards, where when you look at what they actually are, it feels
They're
like
huge. Yeah.
it should be better than this. And so what's happened? Is it a driver issue? Is there something else what's going on that makes them like drop off a cliff, basically?
I want to really say that this is not a great port to be looking at these kind of things. Like we did say it was very improved, but even that video, I said
you're right.
I was like, man, that GPU side though.
I gotta say though, Arkham Knight used to be this sort of like the equivalent of this game. Like all that game runs like garbage on the PC. So seeing that running like so well on a Steam Deck kind of blows my mind. You're just like, it doesn't feel like it should work, but it does.
Right,
One last tangent. Sorry.
I've got to intervene. John has made an error here.
What?
It's Vega 7, which is.
But if you look in his
description,
if you look in his description, it says AMD Radeon 7.
No. I think he's made a mistake here because the Radeon 7 had 16 gigs of memory. It didn't have 4 gigs. I think this is integrated graphics.
I did a search for Radeon 7.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the confusion there. Vega 7 isn't Radeon 7. It was when you flagged the 5500U. I mean, that's a laptop chip.
So it's a laptop system.
Yeah, so this is an integrated graphics and so your argument's been blown out the water there.
My argument, I am now
you're chastened and bowed.
I have been owned. Pwned even.
You've been pwned,
But you know what this means now, Rich.
But I've got to test it on the proper Radeon 7.
We got to come back next week with actual proper Radeon 7 tests.
7 on The Last of Us? Oh, it's going to be really bad still, though. It's not going to be good. But it won't be 7 FPS and 720p very low.
Okay.
But in terms of
that up for reals.
One last tangent is, though, I do kind of want to see the original Titan running some more modern games at some point in the future.
I can do you one better. I've got the Titan Black.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's
which I've got
chip.
off eBay. Yeah, it's the full version.
Is that the full chip?
It is the full GK102.
Yeah.
Can we do an original Titan versus, I don't know, what would be a good GPU to put against the original Titan?
Well, the modern equivalent would be the 4090.
Yeah, it'd be amazing to see 10x, 20x performance multiplier or whatever it's going to be.
What was the AMD equivalent to the
it would be the 290X.
The 290X, right?
Or 295X2 because of the time period.
That's when you had the dual GPU version of that.
Yeah.
That was a monster. I'd love. It was delivered in like a wooden box. I seem to recall.
You don't have one of those, do you?
I might actually start set up an eBay search for that because it was a remarkable beast.
I'm actually
pretty famous GPU.
I freaking love this stuff. Yeah, I want to see this.
Yeah,
we should do it.
The old dual GPU in one card.
Mm-hmm. They also did that with the Titan Z, right?
The Titan
Z. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a 3000.
Like the Smack Z.
That's like the funniest GPU ever.
Want, even though it was not great. I think it was wasn't it like two 680s in a SLI? I don't know. All right,
we're way off.
Final question here about the supers. Hey DF team, with Nvidia releasing the Super Series, I've noticed a lot of discourse pertaining to AMD and how they will react with possible price cuts. It got me thinking. While I commend AMD for making their FSR open source, I also believe that the only way they can compete is to differentiate themselves by making a proprietary feature and be the first to market, akin to Nvidia with DLSS. Thoughts? The problem is installed base. If you're making this technology and basically only the very latest GPUs from AMD can use it, you don't have the market penetration to actually make the investment worthwhile. I think that's the bottom line, and it kind of goes against the philosophy that AMD have set up, which is to, GPU open. It's to make everything work on everything, which I think is, if you're not the market leader with an 80 to 90% market share, it's actually a very laudable thing to be doing. But what do you think AMD could do on this one, Alex? I mean, the thing is, when you look at DLSS, that wasn't a game changer day one. It required like an iteration to actually become something desirable. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them push for something very new. I mean, they do have some proprietary technologies in their driver. The most recent one would be AFMF.
Yep.
They've got Hyper RX, Radeon Chill. These are things that have value add to users who are using their GPUs. And for some of them, for a while, anti-lag was for the most recent GPUs. We'll see whatever happens with that now in the future. I think they could keep going in that route, making their driver have more interesting features. I would actually like to see that. But I think they do actually need to push on price performance more than proprietary things, just like Rich said, just because with their minimal install base, convincing developers to use a non-open technology, unlike for Nvidia where there's so many installed users that it's almost a no-brainer at that point to even put in the black boxes, which not everyone's happy with. Then yeah, I think they should just really focus on price performance and make sure Intel doesn't eat their lunch at some point in the future. Just in case, because Intel is going to be putting out new GPUs soon. I actually do think they're a semi-threat to AMD's current position in the marketplace, even though they're still like way behind in a number of aspects, because they only have things to gain at this point, and AMD has market position to lose. So
yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, and also they've made the right calls technologically. I mean, they're fully in on ray tracing and machine learning, and that's particularly the machine learning side of the equation is going to become crucial over the next few years. And again, go back to that Microsoft FTC leak, and they're talking about their next generation consoles having machine learning. Nvidia's blazed a trail there, and it's a good thing to have. And I think Intel have made the right calls there.
Right, totally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's really all we've got to say. More super reviews to come, obviously. We've got the 4070 Ti Super Max. They would be the 4080 Egregious. But yeah, we'll obviously be following up with those reviews as and when.